Apple released the Retina MacBook Pro, which featured the first riveted-in keyboard. Something that was previously attached with many tiny screws was replaced with rivets. This change also appeared in the MacBook Air around the same time. Keyboard replacements by Apple were offered as whole-top case replacements with new batteries and small parts. The daring third party could attempt replacement by ripping the old one free and using screws to reattach its replacement. The riveted keyboard would also later cause havoc when Apple's redesigned butterfly keyboard in the 2015 to 2019 MacBooks would begin to fail. With the costly top case replacement the only way to swap the keyboard, most of the bottom of the laptop was replaced also. While this repair was covered under Apple's service program, it certainly would have cost Apple a lot financially to replace keyboards. Along with that, their batteries were now glued in beyond belief. In just 4 years, batteries went from user replaceable to screwed inside the laptop with tamper-proof tri-wing screws, to now being glued inside and locked behind a bottom case secured with pentalobe security screws. The Retina MacBook Pros also featured fully soldered-on RAM. The only other previous device to do so was the MacBook Air, which compromised upgradability for thinness. While soldered-on,
I can't see the utility in an Apple computer. Oh, I'm not appealed by this. If they actually design the things well, it'd be like, oh, okay, you have to make compromises, but at least they design it well in the first place. But they use the shittest interconnects and the tiniest heat sinks, just really inadequate for purpose. I hate it. I hate them so much. Plus, everyone that buys them, it's a typical Mac user. I don't suggest you look up that image.
RAM prevented
but they
upgrades.
are, though.
It would also later cause issues with computers whose RAM chips had failed or developed bad solder joints. The reliability of soldered RAM has improved since then and is widely used among device manufacturers, with no Apple device today supporting RAM replacement. In 2013, we saw the first iPhone software-paired component, the Touch ID sensor. Software would reject its replacement. What could be seen as a security feature by some has always had me wondering. A passcode has always been required on first boot, so even if a hack sensor was possible, it wouldn't work anyway. And if the sensor was replaced while the phone was switched on, then it could be programmed to disable it until reboot, or at least provide an override or something in settings. If companies like Google and Samsung can make replacements work, I don't see why Apple couldn't. While impacting repairs, it would also later cause devices to brick when updated or restored in iTunes. Even swapping two sensors from two working devices would cause both to brick, with iTunes spitting out error 53. This was one of the few repair issues that have been fixed over the years in a software update. A replacement sensor will still not work, but these devices will no longer fail to update or restore. Moving along in time to 2015, we saw the first of soldered-on storage in Apple computers with their redesigned MacBook laptop. This change quickly spread over the next few years to the MacBook Pro and MacBook Air, before finally the iMac and Mac Mini. I personally have seen many examples for sale online with failed SSDs, and with it not being replaceable, the device is left unusable. The iPhone 7 in 2016 would replace the home button as we knew it, for a solid-state version that relied entirely on pressure. This button was again linked to each iPhone. However, with its replacement, not even the button worked, meaning you could no longer exit apps. Third parties attempted to circumvent this lockdown through use of Bluetooth buttons and the like. To this day, no replacement works quite right. 2017 saw the introduction of the iPhone 8 and True Tone, a feature that would be taken away with a display replacement.
Surely it's not just
True Tone
Apple
is
being shit.
Software that color shifts the display based on the light color of a room. Removal was done by checking the serial number of both the display and light sensor. If one or both were replaced, it would disable the feature. Serial number programming was reverse engineered, and programmers started hearing the display serial number to a new screen, bypassing the software lock. Apple later combated this by encrypting the serial number data on the display.
Serial number data, one from Australia.
Now the only way to retain the feature
Data
is by
in these
swapping
serial
over two
numbers
tiny
no
chips
good.
found on the back of the screen, which is not only ridiculous but time-consuming, very
now
difficult,
what are you going
and
to do?
risky. Apple's high-end phone, the iPhone X, released alongside the 8, featured the same issue but also introduced another. Like previous iPhones and their Touch ID sensors, the new iPhone's Face ID feature was paired to each device. This included the front cameras. A replacement would not only brick Face ID, but could cause issues with the front camera functionality, including portrait mode. Both iPhone 8 and 10 models now house glass rear panels. While these allowed for wireless charging, the glue used to attach the glass is so strong it needs lasers to break down. It wasn't until the iPhone 14 and 15 Pro that the back glass would become removable. Also this year, Apple admitted they were using software to slow down older devices as the battery aged, and were doing so without telling customers. This came to light when people had been finding two of the same model phones were performing totally different to one another. While Apple still does this, they have implemented battery health and performance information into their battery page in settings. It'd be only a year later and this battery health information would now become disabled on a replacement battery. Like True Tone, it was working off checking the serial number, along with a new warning message that would appear after both a battery and display replacement that would stay in settings indefinitely. Another one of these messages would affect the iPhone 12 cameras shortly after launch.
I don't even know what I'm shooting at.
In repair assessment, I found the rear cameras didn't function correctly when replaced. After mass media attention on the issues, an update for the rear cameras was issued. But part of that upgrade was a not genuine message added for any replacement cameras. The wording would later go on to change from unable to verify genuine part to just unknown part. To circumvent Apple's battery lockdown, some third parties began transferring the battery management system from the old battery over to a new one, fooling the phone into believing the battery was the old one to retain full functionality.
Oh dear.
While this was going on, Apple's redesigned 2019 Mac Pro would be kitted out with hardware-paired SSDs that, while physically removable, were linked to the device. Meaning
Nobody
you must
come
use
come
Apple's
save.
expensive and
Well, there we go.
proprietary
Save now.
SSDs to upgrade your computer.
Although
A
half
feature
now.
enabled with the then new T2 security chip. This is a similar story today with the Mac Studio. You can make replacement SSDs of the same size work, but upgrades to larger sizes are not possible.
Because they're locked out.
2021 and the iPhone 13 saw Face ID becoming disabled
come on.
after a display replacement. Two parts that seemingly are not connected at all. This was eventually fixed after more media coverage. However, what wasn't was the glitchy front cameras. After replacement of the front cameras, a user is not able to take any images. This image has carried on through the iPhone 14 and 15 series, along with the removal of auto brightness, which will cause issues on iPhones with always-on displays. These phones have also received mixed results with replacement vibration motors and flash flex cables on the rear glass. iFixit reported there are...
You know what? I am interested in this video. I am. But the whiny way he keeps talking in that really annoying way, because his name's Simon Sniffcock, I find him pretty whiny and annoying. He sounds like he's trying to be a brum.
iPhone 15 Pro Max crashes with a replacement back glass. However, my iPhone 15 Pros exhibit no issues. This unpredictable and heavily controlled replacement parts problem has also made it to Apple's new Mac laptop, with the Apple Silicon MacBook Pros I've tested having paired Touch ID sensors, lid sleep sensors, and displays. The lid sleep sensor was cracked, and a third-party calibration tool created. Whether it will be patched like the True Tone workaround remains to be seen. A replacement display on these new MacBooks will also cause brightness issues and weird artifacts at the top of the display, with two laptops exhibiting the same artifacts. As the years roll by, keeping out third parties from repairing Apple devices has been getting more and more aggressive, though Apple has released a self-repair program, which, while provided access to genuine parts, repair guides and tools, was less than a viable means of repair, with many replacement parts costing a similar amount to having Apple do the repair, meaning doing it yourself really makes little sense. The software issues still remain and are only removed when you contact Apple to complete the repair. Of course, they'll only enable these parts if you've purchased them from their store, allowing them to continue the control on repair. but a new beginning might be coming, with Apple backing a right to repair bill, something none of us saw coming. The bill in California only covers products sold after
They must know which ways the wind's blowing, and that is going to affect their share prices if they seem to be anti-consumer.
Apple says they intend to honor
Which is
California's
not a
new
good
repair
thing to be
provisions
if you
across the
are
United States. What that
a
means
business
for
that
those in the
depends
rest of the
upon its
world remains to be
consumers.
seen. But for now, the iPhone 15 is just as software locked down.
I
as
really
many
wish you
of the
could re-roll your
previous
class
models
in the
before it.
middle of a game.
I've attempted to provide knowledge on all of the issues that have affected repair over the last decade to the best of my ability. Most of this information is that of my own experience and opinion. Given just how much has changed over the years, there's a good chance I've missed some things that impact repairability. So be sure to check the comments for any updates. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing and check out the playlist for tech that's not what it seems. If you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time. This iPhone 14 Pro Max didn't even survive 6 months. Its last owner certainly didn't take very good care of it. It suffered an impact from the back.
Come on! Oh, fuck's sake, can't get my gun out.
In World War II, Germany constructed several Flaktürme, or in English, flag towers. They were located in 3 cities, namely Berlin, Hamburg and Vienna. Many of them actually survived up to this day, because they were usually too difficult to destroy. For instance, in Vienna, all 6 are still standing, and they're also the most modern. Now before we take a closer look at the Vienna towers, let's first tackle some basics about the towers. After British bomber attacks in Berlin in 1940, Hitler ordered the construction of flag towers for the defense of Berlin. Hamburg and Vienna would follow later on. Now it's important to add that generally parts of the upper leadership of the Luftwaffe and Hitler himself favored AA guns instead of fighters. Hence there was a general emphasis on flak in Germany. Now the question arises, why to build a flak tower in the first place? There are several reasons for this. Cities were high priority targets for bombers. Thus they needed to be defended, and additionally the flak was put in an effective position if the city was an important target. Yet another important point is that bombers are most vulnerable in the final approach, because due to the limits of targeting devices, the bomber had to keep a steady course for a while. Hence evasive maneuvers were out of question. Since the proximity of AA guns to the target area was crucial, putting the flak directly into urban areas made sense. But due to all the the guns needed to be located high enough to allow for a free firing arc in all directions.
I don't know.
Additionally, fire control systems and other infrastructure was needed. Thus putting them on a tower made actually sense. Of course, this is the perspective if we just look at the flag towers as a gun emplacement. Quite interestingly, a Luftwaffe general after the war noted the following. Ich habe den Bau dieses Turmes sehr begrüßt, weil in den Turm etwa 6000 Zivilisten bei feindlichen Angriffen
okay, you're using it in the mean language no one uses.
anlegen ließ. Die Schießaufgaben hätte man in gleicher Weise zum Beispiel von einem Flakhügel lösen können. I was very pleased about the construction of this tower, because about 6,000 civilians were able to find shelter in the tower during attack, and a hospital for the civilian population could be created. The shooting could have been carried out in the same manner, for instance, from a flak hill. Hence, since the flak towers also provided air raid shelter for civilians and other functions, just seeing them as an expensive gun emplacement is a bit short-sighted. Now flak towers came in pairs, one for each variant, a command tower or a light turm, and a combat tower or a Gefechtsturm. Here you can see 2 different examples in Vienna. These are quite close to each other, whereas these 2 are about 400 meters from each other. Generally 3 pairs of combat and command towers were arranged in a triangle formation with overlapping fire arcs near the city center. As you might have suspected, the command tower housed the radar and fire control equipment, whereas the combat tower was equipped with guns. Besides the 2 variants, there were 3 types. Type 1 was the original one, it was used in Berlin and Hamburg, whereas Type 2 was used in Hamburg and Vienna. Type 3 was only used in Vienna. Without going into much detail, Type 2 and 3 were generally simpler and smaller. Here you can see a Type 2 combat tower in Vienna, located in the Ahrenberg Park. As you can see, it has a rectangle shape. This type was also used in Hamburg, for instance in Wilhelmsburg. Yet let's take a look at the final version, the Type 3 Combat Tower. This one is located in Augarten in Vienna. As you can see, the Type 3 looks quite different. It has a more circular foundation instead of a rectangular one of the previous types. Now let's take a closer look at the Type 3 Combat Tower. At the top there were 4 circular areas that could house each a twin 12.8 cm flak. Additionally, on the small emplacements, spotlights and light AA could be placed. As far as I know, there were no light AA guns in Vienna, because there were almost no low-level attacks. This tower appears round, but as you can see, when we get closer it actually only has 16 sides. Now let's look
Only
at the overall
16
functions of a
sides.
flak tower. Due to their size, such a tower was not just a simple gun emplacement. It was used in multiple ways. As an example, here we have a Type 2 combat tower in the Arnberg Park. The lower areas were usually used for civilians as air raid shelters, and in some cases there were also medical facilities. Building facilities were located in the basement. In order to not interfere with the military aspects, there were extra entries and stairways for civilians. Additionally, there were air conditioning facilities, and above the civilian area there were sometimes crucial production facilities. Only the top levels were exclusively for the military, containing various kinds of facilities like kitchens, storage rooms, quarters, etc. Note that the supplies stored inside were solely for military use. Additionally, there were electricity generators in the cellar and also a fresh water supply. Now to give you some data and visuals of the Augarten towers in Vienna. They were not only the most modern one but also the highest flak towers. The Combat Tower has a height of 55 meters. The outside walls have a thickness of around 2.5 meters, the roof of about 3.5 meters. The tower has a core at the center with a 12 meter diameter, with 1.5 meter thick walls. Now the armament consisted ideally of twin 12.8 cm flak guns, but this was not always the case due to delays in production and other issues. Hence, single 12.8 cm, 10.5 cm and even 8.8 cm guns were used at times. Note that the shell for the 12.8 cm gun had a weight of around 50 kg. This also meant that proper elevators and storing facilities were required. Now let's look at the command tower. It had a height of 53 meters and a length of 31 meters and a width of 50 meters. Additionally, it contained a shaft of about 30 meters depth to lower the radar. Now, although I didn't find a proper assessment on the usefulness of the flak towers themselves, I found various assessments that stated that the AA guns themselves had a rather negligible effect in general, although their costs were quite high. This is stated by various authors like Stephen Saloga. The flak force consumed between a quarter and a third of Wehrmacht ordnance and ammunition production. The associated radars and communications equipment consumed half the military electronic production. And from the German historian Ralf Schabel we have some data from the Quartermaster General. Die Erfolge der Flak waren aber teuer erkauft. Aufgrund einer Statistik des Generalquartiermeisters der Luftwaffe rechnet man mit
Oh well,
60.000
nobody's defending the arc generator, never mind, eh?
cm Flak 36,
I've got my little flak tower over
8.5
here,
für eine
so I'm
8.8
happy.
cm Flak 41. Für die 10.5 cm Flak 39 waren es 6.000 Schuss und auch für die 12.8 Flak 40 noch 3.000 Schuss. Yet the successes of the flak were quite expensive. On the basis of the statistics of the Quartermaster General of the Luftwaffe, 16,000 shots were counted for a kill, the 8.8 cm flak 36 and 8,500 shots for the 8.8 cm flak
Look,
41.
this is the only twin MG emplacement. Nobody else can be asked to build
6,000
one.
shots. And also for the 12.8
It's fun doing
cm
with
flak
idiots.
40, still 3,000 shots of ammunition were used. As you can imagine, putting the flak guns on the towers might have increased the hit chances, but I doubt it was cost effective, considering the time and money spent on the construction of the flak towers. As always, sources are in the description. If you want to know more about strategic bombing, check out this video from Bismarck, or maybe if you want to learn more about Japanese bomber tactics, which is so far my best illustrated video, take a look at this one.
Good,
Thank you for
got you.
watching, and see you next time.
Right, I'm injured. Need to find a medic. I don't see any. You know what? Not gonna.
30 games, 7 layers. This is the definitive illegal and disturbing video game iceberg.
I'm just gonna stay
And
here
make
and
the site
fuck
up
these
with the worst
guys.
of the worst.
They're
Let's start
cunts.
at the
I want
tip
them
of
all
the
to die.
iceberg. Sexy Beach is a video game series developed by the Japanese company Illusion, who will come up again later for another title they've made. The Sexy Beach series is primarily known for its adult content, focusing on the interactions between the player and the various female characters. The setting of the game is typically on a beach or resort, where the player can interact with these characters in a variety of different ways, most of which being explicit. The gameplay involves dating simulation and visual novel elements, and you're meant to engage in conversations with the characters, with the objective often revolving around developing a relationship that leads to what I'll call gameplay encounters. Sexy Beach has been controversial mainly due to its explicit content. In Japan, it falls under the category of eroge,
Just as
or erotic
respawning's
games,
been
which face
disabled.
criticism and legal challenges in other countries. The depiction of certain activities, especially given the questionably youthful appearance of some of the characters, has made it slightly infamous. Due to its nature, Sexy Beach and its sequels have had a very limited release outside of Japan, often confined to specific adult-oriented platforms, or requiring modification or censoring to comply with local laws and regulations regarding explicit content. Kawaii Killer is a mobile game that garnered attention for its unique blend of cute aesthetics and violent gameplay. Developed by Tabamasu Games, a small independent game studio, Kawaii Killer was released in 2014. The game features a vibrant, colourful art style, typical of kawaii culture, which is cute in Japanese, which is obviously made to appeal to extremely
Looks like
young
Happy
children.
Tree Friends.
In the game, players assume the role of a cartoonish character named Davy, who is a trapper in a forest full of cute animals. The gameplay is very simple and only involves various tapping and swiping actions to catch and dispatch of the animals in the game in a very gory way.
Being shot
Upon
on.
its release, Kawaii Killer obviously faced criticism and controversy for its graphic depiction of violence against the cute cartoon-like animals that are made to appeal to younger audiences. The surge of complaints made against the game from parents of young children had it eventually removed from the App Store and Google Play, with Apple issuing a statement saying the app concept is not appropriate for the App Store in its current state.
Oh, am I
However,
going to be...
children who've already
I'm the
downloaded
first
the game
on.
are still able to play it.
Oh, that's a relief.
Postal is an extremely controversial video game developed by Running with Scissors. First released
An
in
extremely
1990.
funny game.
It's best known for its dark themes and extreme violence, and the game has been subject of debate and controversy, particularly in the context
Yep,
of the
it's
portrayal of
just
mental
me.
illness and societal breakdown.
Nobody else
The game
got on
follows
board.
the story of
Everybody
a
else is
character
dead.
known as the Postal Dude, who
Because
believes
they
he's the
all
sole
suck.
individual in his town that isn't affected by an airborne agent supposedly released by the US Air Force that he calls the Hate Plague. This leads him on a violent rampage through various locations, including
Hello,
a
Alphabet
ghetto,
Cat.
train
Hello,
station,
Lizard.
trailer park, truck stop, and eventually a school full of children.
Yeah,
The
I
narrative
was
is presented through Postal Dude's
fiddling
perspective,
with,
accompanied by a voice in his head that taunts his victim.
Hang on, just a second. Be quiet, you. Right. So, I was doing some yard work, I believe. Gardening, that's the term for it. And the on-off switch on the hedge trimmer is not working, so I thought, right, I'll just unplug the spark plug. That will stop it. Which it did, but then I noticed how wobbly the spark plug was, and I thought, oh dear, that's not good. So I fiddled with it, and that was very dumb, because it turns out an internal combustion engine and all its associated parts, they get quite warm during use. So I was like, fuck me, this is an hour long, this video. Anyway, let's carry on. I'm going to put on my headphones and I'll probably just scoop up the mess I've made earlier on. That'll do. Headphones,
And makes
play.
cryptic comments to him. Postal plays as an isometric shooter, where the player navigates through different levels, engaging in gunfights against various enemies. The game's primary objective is to kill a certain number of enemies in the area to progress. The game stands out for its lack of a conventional narrative structure, and its focus on the protagonist's actions and mental state, rather than just a traditional storyline, which initially depicted
guy's
the
gone
postal dude
postal.
attempting a massacre at an elementary school,
Yeah.
only to find his weapons to be ineffective against the children. As they all laugh at him and his mental state deteriorates further, he finds himself restrained in a mental asylum, as satanic and hellish images cover the screen. However, the ending was later changed in Postal Redux, due to what the developers called an increasing prevalence and decreased shock value of school shootings. The revised
Yeah, they were
ending
kind of
features the
passé
burial
by
of
the
an
time
unknown
it came
person,
out.
believed to be Postal Dude's funeral. Harvester, released in 1996, is an extremely unique point-and-click adventure game. It's best known for its surreal narrative and extremely gory content, and the game stands as a distinctive and extremely provocative video game. The game unfolds in the small American farming town of Harvest in 1953, where the teenager Steve Mason awakens with no memory of his past.
It's full motion video.
Harvest is a peculiar and unsettling place, filled with bizarre and hostile characters who seem like twisted parodies of real people. When Steve goes out asking the people of the town who he was and what he's doing here, he is always met with the same eerie reply.
Well, you always were a kidder, Steve.
You always were a kidder, Steve.
Well, you always were such a kidder, Steve.
However, most of the townsfolk persistently
You're a
urge
kidder,
him to join the
Steve.
mysterious Order of the Harvest Moon, based in the Lodge, which is a huge building within the town.
Let's see,
which
so that
becomes
one's
Steve's
maxed
new main
out.
objective.
That's not
Steve's
maxed
exploration leads him to Stephanie
That's not.
Potsdam,
That
who shares
is-
the
that
same
is-
amnesiac condition. Together, they
oh,
seek to uncover the truth
okay.
behind Harvest.
I
and
haven't
find a way
maxed
to
out being a
escape.
medic,
The
so let's
Lodge
be a
becomes
medic.
Central to his quest. As to gain entry, Steve is given a new
Probably do
task
more
each day
medics,
by
and
the
I'm
Lodge,
bored being
beginning with
everything else.
petty acts of vandalism that quickly escalate to theft and arson, with each task having unforeseen and tragic circumstances that usually result in someone's accidental death, murder, or even the suicide of a mother and her child. Meanwhile, driven by their mutual fear and reliance on one another, Steve and Stephanie become lovers. As Steve gains entry to the lodge that he believes must hold the answer to a strange condition, and delves deeper into the building, and is forced to confront twisted moral lessons that invert traditional values, like how the lodge believes charity is futile, and how you should not respect the elderly as they're physically useless. As Steve reaches the top of the dreamlike lodge, the climax reveals an actual twist, being that Harvest is a virtual reality simulation controlled by scientists from the 1990s, aiming to transform average individuals into serial killers by desensitizing them to violence. The game culminates in a moral choice for Steve. He can either murder Stephanie and be brought back into the real world, thereby embracing a life of violence, or if you refuse to harm Stephanie, you'll face death in the real world. This decision leads to drastically different endings. Choosing to kill Stephanie results in the game showing a final cutscene where Steve is released into the real world, but becomes a remorseless killer influenced by his experience in the simulation. Or by choosing to live a life with Stephanie in the fake world, Steve lives a peaceful life within the simulation, but is rendered brain dead in reality. Harvester has obviously stirred controversy with its graphic violence, dark themes, and the exploration of societal and moral decay.
Sounds interesting.
Manhunt was developed by Rockstar North and released in 2003.
Oh,
It's
Manhunt.
an extremely infamous and controversial action stealth video game known for its graphic violence and dark themes. The game's story centers around James Earl Cash, a death row inmate who finds himself unwillingly cast in a deadly game orchestrated by the figure known as the Director. The game begins with journalist Mel Powers reporting on the execution of our character, James L. Cash. However, Cash's execution is a sham. He's been sedated and awakens to
Insufficient
find
ore.
himself at the mercy of the Director, who communicates to him through an earpiece. The Director promises Cash his freedom in exchange for participating in his games. Cash must eliminate gang members, referred to as hunters, across various locations in Carcer City, all whilst being filmed by CCTV to create the Director's dream snuff film. Cash's journey takes him through a series of derelict and dangerous environments, each controlled by different gangs. There's the Hoods, which are Cash's first adversaries, which consist of criminals and corrupt police officers. The Cerberus, which is the Director's personal security unit, who are also responsible for moving Cash between locations. There's the Skins, which is a Nazi skinhead gang. The War Dogs, which is a sadistic paramilitary group
Come on,
that
can I
kidnapped
get
Cash's
there?
family, which just only
That's it.
serves to inspire his
Let's
violence.
rescue the Ching
There's
Chong
also
ping
the
ponger.
Innocents, which is an outlaw gang divided into Hispanic occultists known as the Scullies and the psychopathic Babyface.
See if I can
and the
revive
Smileys,
myself.
which are a group of former asylum inmates.
Come on.
Cash's quest for survival quickly
I
turns
pressed
into
Q
a
just
quest of
before I
vengeance
died.
when the Director betrays him, ordering the War Dogs to murder his family.
No.
The remaining War Dogs attempt to recapture Cash,
Oh, well.
but he manages to eliminate them
Good
and team
game.
up with a journalist who reveals the Director's true identity, being Lionel Starkweather, a former film producer turned snuff film ring operator. The final act of the game sees Cash navigating through a police and SWAT-infested city to reach Starkweather's mansion, before finally killing Starkweather himself. The game concludes with the journalist exposing
dear.
Starkweather's crimes, and the police's compliance, while Cash's fate remains unknown. Manhunt faced several bans and restrictions in several countries due to its violence, including being made entirely illegal in Australia.
Yeah, but Australia, you know, they
Fear
just
is a
goo goo gaga
psychological
baby
horror
games.
Game, originally released as a mod for Half-Life. However, in 2013,
Oh,
it
give
became a
up.
standalone game due to its popularity. The game follows Simon, a young man, who wakes up in a gloomy alley after being hit by a car. He finds himself in a nightmarish version of a Swedish city, filled with darkness and a sense of foreboding. As Simon attempts to find his way home, he encounters a series of deformed and terrifying monsters, with each encounter being more disturbing than the last. The plot thickens as Simon explores various locations in the city, from decrepit apartment buildings
Being
to a
revived by
subway
me.
station. Each location presents its own set of challenges and horrors, with the environment becoming increasingly surreal and menacing, reflecting Simon's mental
I think I'm the only one here.
Simon's journey begins in confusion and fear as he tries to navigate the hostile.
No, there are some other
His
people
first major
here.
challenge comes when he finds a man who had texted him earlier in the game for help, now dead in a bathtub. The
Oh.
discovery marks the beginning of Simon's descent into the game's nightmarish world. A significant emotional moment for Simon occurs when he meets Sophie, his childhood friend and unrequited love, standing on the edge of a rooftop. After Simon confesses his love for her,
Oh,
Sophie
give up.
rejects him, with their
Let's run
encounter
away.
ending tragically with Sophie's suicide. Throughout the game, Simon faces various choices, such as whether or not to confront or flee from the monster known as Carcass, and whether or not to turn over his gun to a doctor he encounters late in the game. These two decisions influence the story's direction and lead to completely different endings.
Can I revive
The
myself?
game's climax is in Simon's house, where it's revealed that the entire story was a product of Simon's imagination. After his car accident, Simon is now wheelchair
Nah,
bound
we're all
and
dead.
depressed.
I was the only
Advised by
one.
his therapist to write about his feelings. The horrifying journey and monsters
Can't expect to
represent
defeat the
Simon's
bugs by
inner battles
myself.
and trauma, with the monster Carcass that seemed to be constantly following Simon, representing his declining mental state, and the doctor who you could turn your gun over to, representing Simon's therapist. Cry of Fear features multiple endings, each dependent on the player's choices throughout the game. If the monster Carcass wasn't killed, and Simon didn't give his gun to the doctor...
Oh yeah,
in this
hatred
ending,
or
Simon succumbs to
Postal
his
without
darkest
the humour.
thoughts. And feeling utterly hopeless and trapped in his own mind, he kills Sophie and his therapist, which is also followed by Simon
Revive
taking
troopers
his
at
own
distance
life.
by
His
shouting at
suicide
them.
note
Oh,
expresses
that's kinda
his deep
useful.
resentment and a desire for his body to haunt all those who find him. If Carcass again wasn't killed, and Simon does give the gun to the doctor, this ending sees Simon's unresolved feelings for Sophie, leading him down a dark path.
It's
After
okay,
killing
I'm not
Sophie, he
using
commits
the
suicide,
finger
and
that's
his suicide
hurting.
note reveals his twisted reasoning, as he believes he can now possess her forever, as he never got over his rejection.
Plus I put a bit of
If
colloidal
Carcass
silver
was
on it,
killed
so I'll
and
be
Simon
alright.
didn't give the gun to the doctor, Simon directs his anger and blame towards his therapist, whom he kills before killing himself. In this ending, his suicide note suggests that he believes his therapist's methods worsened his condition. He also expresses a wish that Sophie never learns of his actions. And if Carcass was killed and Simon did give the gun to the doctor, the ending presents a dramatic confrontation between Simon and his fictionalized book self. The real Simon, experiencing a mental breakdown, believes he's killing his imaginary counterpart. However, in reality, he fatally shoots two police officers. Simon is then admitted to a mental hospital under the care of his therapist,
join this
which
sort
is
of-
somehow
as a
probably the
medic.
most hopeful out of these endings. We're now moving on to level 2 of the iceberg. Custer's Revenge was released in 1982 by
Wait, so
Mystique
the
for
thing is right
Atari
there, and the ore
2600,
connector's right there.
and is often called one of the
Well, this
worst
should make
games
collecting
ever.
ore
The
easy.
game features a character
It's right
named
next
after
door to the
General
Mobile
George
HQ.
Armstrong Custer, who fought in several wars against Native Americans, and the game's objective is really simple. The player controls a pixelated Custer, depicted with an exaggerated pencil, as he attempts to cross a field under arrow attack to reach a naked Native American woman tied to a pole. Once you reach the pole, you mash the action button as fast as you can. The better you mash, the more points you earn, with the game restarting after getting 50 points. I'm not going to explain what mashing the action button does, as I'm sure you can use your imagination. The game is simple and repetitive, and was part of a series of adult-themed games released by the company, which sought to exploit the video game industry for sensationalized adult content. The development of Custer's Revenge did not involve any significant
Look at all those
technological
points for
gameplay
rearming
innovations.
allies.
Instead, it relied solely on its shocking content to generate sales and publicity. As Custer's Revenge faced legal challenges, protests, and calls for its ban, though the game's designer, Joel Miller, said Custer was seducing the maiden, and that she was a willing participant. Stuart Kessler,
Yeah.
president of America Multiple Industries, the company who published the game, stated, "Our objective is not to arouse, our objective is to entertain. When people play our games, we want them smiling and we want them laughing." Released in October 2014, the teaser trailer for Hatred was anything but ordinary.
Here we go, here's Hatred Alphabet Cat.
What is important is what I'm going
Imagine if Postal
It portrayed
had
the game's
no
main character
humor or
expressing
fun
their
in
disdain
it.
for humanity, gearing up to embark on what they called their genocidal crusade.
Okay, that
In
medic
Hatred,
is,
you play the antagonist, a
dead,
disturbed
so I'm
man
just gonna
completely disillusioned with the world
pay my
and
respects to
humanity.
him.
Fueled by pure
Right.
hatred, he embarks on a violent killing spree with one simple goal: to eradicate as many human lives as possible before he himself is taken down. The gameplay is uncompromisingly violent, and the game
Oops.
itself takes on an isometric point of
That
view,
was dumb.
with the objective being pretty
Should have
straightforward.
recognised the warning
Navigate
sights
through
there.
various levels, from the suburban neighbourhoods to police stations, and exterminate
Wait.
every living soul. Hailing
Can
from
you use
Poland,
stim packs to
Protip
revive
Creations
people?
was relatively new to the gaming scene when they launched Hatred. In fact, Hatred was their debut title. The game was heavily inspired by the twin-stick shooters from the arcade era, but with an obvious and somewhat immature dark twist. The developers aimed to create a game that, in their words, avoided politeness, colourfulness, and any sort of philosophical undertones. They sought to create a game that served as a reminder of the industry's past as a rebellious medium and purely surface-level entertainment. Whilst the game in its trailer was designed to provoke, the CEO of Disruptive Creations expressed surprise at the scale of the reaction it received, as he firmly believed the game didn't cross any moral boundaries, asserting that those who disagreed could just choose not to play it. The team has often stated that they intended for Hatred to be a response to the trend of games becoming more politically correct, as their true aim was to push boundaries. Among actual players, reactions were divisive. While the game garnered a cult following of those who appreciated its no-holds-barred approach to violence, many felt it gratuitous, having very little impact other than the initial shock value. The mainstream media, often less forgiving than the specialized gaming outlets, called it the most
violent video game in history.
and one of the most
Yeah, they
controversial
always
games
say
of all
that.
time. Hatred's dark themes even led to its temporary removal from Steam, although accompanied with a personal apology from Gabe Newell himself, who was later reinstated, citing an error in its removal. Hatred's physical release was not without controversy either. It became the first game to earn an adults-only rating from the ESRB, solely for its extreme violence. This made mainstream retail distribution in the United States nearly impossible, as major console manufacturers prohibit adult-only rated games on their platforms. Fast forwarding to June 1st, 2015, Hatred was finally released to the public. The game used Unreal Engine 4 to create its game world, and at the request
Oh,
of
I
Epic
didn't know
Games, the developer of the Unreal Engine, the logo was removed from the game and trailer. Just before the game's release, Twitch announced the ban on all adult-only rated games, thereby prohibiting Hatred from being streamed on the platform.
Good
Left Behind
baby
Eternal
platforms.
Forces is a real-time strategy game developed by Left Behind Games in 2006.
Wait,
it's
what?
based on the popular Left Behind series of Christian apocalyptic fiction by Chris LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins.
Chris
the game combines
LaHaye?
religious themes with strategy gameplay, and it's set in the post-apocalyptic world following the biblical event of the Rapture. In Left Behind Eternal Forces, players find
I've
themselves in
never
the
played this
post-Rapture
game.
New York City. According to the game's narrative inspired by Christian beliefs, the Rapture has taken all true believers
It's not
to
Christian
heaven,
beliefs,
leaving
though.
the rest of the world to face the consequences. The player leads a group of tribulation.
No,
chasers,
no,
fighting-
no. Look, the Rapture is not Christian, right? It's a fan fiction. There's nowhere in the Bible. The Rapture happens. What? Look, Jesus has to come down to earth first for the Rapture to happen. It's not gonna happen. It's not like, oh, we're all gonna be saved, so don't do anything, guys. This world is. No, I hate it. I hate it so much. It's literally 2 more weeks trust the plan for Christians.
Fighting against the Antichrist's army, known as the Global Community Peacekeepers. The gameplay involves building up a base, gathering resources, and recruiting and training units. Players must manage their own team of characters, each with specific skills and abilities. The game focuses not on just military strength, but also on spiritual warfare. Players need to maintain the faith of their units while combating enemy forces and completing various missions. One of the unique aspects of Left Behind Eternal Forces is its emphasis on non-violent options. While combat is a part of the game, players are also encouraged to use prayer and spiritual influence to sway enemies onto their side. However, Left Behind Eternal Forces generated controversy primarily due to its religious themes and the portrayal of spiritual warfare. Critics and some religious groups were concerned about the game's blending of violent strategy gameplay and religious content, debating on whether or not it's appropriate to mix the gameplay involving combat and conversion with the teachings of Christianity. The game also faced criticism for its portrayal of non-Christian characters, and the concept of converting or battling against them. I personally reviewed this aspect as potentially promoting religious intolerance, or just being plain divisive. Despite the controversy, the game found
Oh
a
no,
niche audience
God, woe
amongst fans
betide
of
we
the
have a
Left
game
Behind
which
series,
is
and those interested
divisive.
in Christian-themed
We, you know,
games.
we.
Left
Well, has
Behind
everything got to be the
Forces
Bee
is
Gees
not
now?
only
If
a
it like,
unique
oh,
title on
if
the
somebody in the world
just
doesn't
video
like
games
it,
in
then
general.
it's like, oh, we
We're now
can't go
moving
ahead
to
with
level
it.
3 of the iceberg. Hong Kong 97 is a 2D shoot-'em-up game, infamously known for its controversial and bizarre content. Developed by
Oh,
Happy
Hong
Soft
Kong
Limited,
97. I
also
wonder
known
what's
as the
that about.
Japanese writer Kurosawa and his friend who helped him make the game. It was released in 1995 for the Super Famicom, which is the Japanese version of the SNES. The game gained notoriety
Call it a
for its
SNES.
political themes, but it's extremely shocking content. The game is set in the year 1997, around the time of the transfer of Hong Kong's sovereignty from the United Kingdom to China. The player controls a character named Chin, who is for some reason
Chin
described
Chong.
as a relative of Bruce Lee. Chin's mission is to eliminate an influx
You
of
relative of
people
Bruce
from
Lee?
mainland China, represented as endless waves of enemies.
Yeah,
and
you
ultimately
gotta
defeat
stop
the
those
resurrected
mainlanders
Cao
coming to
Xiaoping,
Hong
which is a
Kong.
misspelled reference to the then Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping. Hong Kong 97 is really simplistic in its gameplay. The player is Chin, shoots incoming enemies while avoiding being
You're
hit.
the hero,
game
a
features
Chin?
a single level that repeats indefinitely with no variation in gameplay or objectives. It's known for being extremely challenging, with many players unable to survive for more than a few seconds. Now, the game gained significant controversy for several reasons. Its portrayal of Chinese people and the use of a real-life political figure as a villain was seen as highly insensitive and offensive. But the real reason people
Oh no,
still
the
know
poor
of
Chinese
1997
people are so
is
sad.
because it includes a real photo of a still unidentified dead body as a game over screen. Which
Yeah.
is obviously going to shock and disturb many players, especially considering with how often you'll die in the game.
So?
The game has a very amateurish and crude design, with
Yeah.
poorly designed graphics, and
Cool.
extremely repetitive music. Hong Kong
Awesome.
97 is remembered far more for its notoriety rather than its gameplay quality.
Sounds like someone's just jealous they're not a game
Quest for Bush
designer.
and Quest for Saddam are first-person shooter games known for their political content and controversial nature. Quest for Saddam, created by Petrilla Entertainment, was released in 2003, while Quest for Bush, a mod of the former, was released later by the Global Islamic Media Front, an Al-Qaeda propaganda organization.
Nice.
These games gained attention for their direct reference to real-world political figures, and obviously being directly in contest with each other. Quest for Saddam is a low-budget game set against the backdrop of the Iraq War. In the game, players go out on a mission to capture the Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein. The gameplay involves navigating various environments in Iraq, battling Iraqi soldiers and other enemies, with the ultimate goal of finding and capturing Saddam. The game is criticized for its simplistic portrayal of complex political and military situations, as it
Oh,
was
I ought to do my job.
propaganda, trivializing
Someone over there
as a
needs-
whole. Quest for Bush, also known as Night of Bush Capturing, is a modded version of Quest for Saddam released by an Al-Qaeda propaganda group. The game's narrative is altered to target the then US President George W. Bush. In this version, players assume the role of a jihadist fighter, with the final objective being to capture or kill the president. The mod obviously completely flipped the original game, turning it into a tool for anti-American propaganda, whilst Quest for Saddam was criticized for its oversimplification and potential insensitivity regarding the Iraq War. Quest for Bush faced even more severe criticism.
Why? Just sounds like there's some shit posters having fun.
Obscure and mysterious video game. Well, I don't even know if you can call it a video game. It's known for its enigmatic origins and connection to internet folklore, particularly within the community of the X-board and 4chan. The game has gained infamy among enthusiasts of creepy and unconventional games, partly due to its eerie atmosphere and the mystery surrounding its creation and purpose. Station.exe
Right, time to
reported
man the
the
guns.
original disc found at a tech expo in Rochester, New York. An anonymous user claiming their father purchased a CD case containing 2 discs. While the first disc had engineering software, the second unmarked disc held the game's Station.exe. The game is believed to have been created with Blender, and its subsequent exploration has led to various speculations and theories about its purpose and origins. The player navigates
Blender's not a game
environment
engine.
and is pursued by floating faces with ambient noises adding to the eerie atmosphere. If you're caught by one of these faces, the game instantly closes. One of the most intriguing aspects of Station.exe is the discovery of numbers within the game, which some players interpreted as coordinates. These coordinates supposedly lead to a real building in Russia, which mirrors the structure of the building found in-game. This element has led to speculation about the game being part of an ARG, though no one has actually yet to go to the coordinates in Russia. The enigmatic nature of Station.exe extends beyond its gameplay. When people reportedly dissected the game's code, they claimed to find a variety of unusual elements and connections to other internet forums, and a creepy password-protected website that still no one knows the purpose of. The Guy game is a game that garnered significant controversy and is highly illegal today. Developed by Top Heavy Studios and released in 2004, the Guy game is set up as a trivia quiz game where players answer questions while watching live action footage. The game features young women, often referred to as the hotties, who participate in various challenges and are filmed in locations like beaches during spring break. As players progress through the game by answering trivia questions, the live action camera footage includes scenes of the women revealing themselves. If the player answers the questions
that's
correctly,
controversial.
the game features a rating system that tracks the player's success, with higher scores unlocking more explicit content. The Guy game became infamous for obvious reasons. The game faced criticism for objectifying women and for its explicit content, as it was accused of promoting a sexist and demeaning portrayal of women. However, the controversy escalated when it was discovered that one of the women featured in the game was underage at the time of filming. This revelation led to legal actions and the game being pulled from shelves in several regions, due to it being considered CP.
Oh no, that's not
Lostboy.exe
nice.
is an obscure video game that gains variety in online communities, particularly on 4chan. The game itself is stylistically similar to the classic Windows 3D maze screensaver. You basically have to navigate through maze-like environments with a first-person perspective. The game's design is relatively simple, but it's distinguished by its incorporation of
Look at all
strange,
these idiots.
unsettling satanic imagery within the maze's walls. Lost Boy initially gained attention due to a version of the game that was widely distributed that contained a virus. The infected version, which first spread on 4chan, was made for stealing personal information from players, including things like passwords and credit card information. The presence of the virus, coupled with the game's creepy imagery, added to its mystique and made it a topic of caution and intrigue. However, fairly recently, it was realized that the virus-laden version of Lost Boy was not created by the original developer, but was instead modified by an unknown third party. Somewhat recently, the original version of Lostboy.exe was
Insufficient
uncovered. This version, free of any malicious software, offers players
Good,
a chance
they
to
figured
experience
out what the
game
guns
as
are for.
initially intended by its creator.
I mean, they might be stupid apes, but at least they can figure out what a gun is.
Focusing on more on creating an unsettling atmosphere rather than being a fully fledged game. We're now moving on to level 4. Super Columbine Massacre RPG was developed by Danny Ledone and released in 2005. The game is a role-playing simulation that recreates
Let's see if I can revive these dickheads.
American history. The game's narrative closely follows the real-life events leading up to and including the event itself, focusing on the perspectives of the shooters being Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold. The game starts with a depiction of Eric Harris being woken up by his mother on the morning of April 20th, 1990.
That sounds like names you'd encounter in a synagogue.
So they can meet to finalize their plans for the attack. In the game, Harris and Klebold
Oops.
plant propane bombs inside the building. When the bombs fail to detonate as planned, they decide to proceed with their attack nonetheless. The game allows players to control the characters as they navigate the school, with the number of victims being determined by the player's actions. The sequence ends with the characters turning their weapons on themselves, followed by a montage of real and fictional images, including photos of the shooters and scenes of mourning. The game takes a surreal turn in the second half, depicting Dylan Klebold's journey through hell. Klebold encounters and battles demons and characters from the video game Doom, reflecting the shooter's interest in...
Oh, my name is just going to be the serial number on my £3 keyboard.
In Hell, Klebold and
What sort of
later Harris
fucking name
meet
is that
various
anyway?
fictional characters like Pikachu and Bart Simpson, and historical figures like Malcolm X and John Lennon for whatever reason. The game culminates in a battle against Satan, whose sprite was just ripped from South Park. After defeating Satan,
Cool.
the characters are congratulated, and the game concludes by returning to the school, where a press conference is held. This segment of the game includes dialogue that directly references the actual event and satirizes the political and media reactions to the massacre. The game critiques various aspects such as gun control debates, religious fundamentalism, and the scapegoating of Marilyn Manson in video games in the aftermath of the shooting. JFK Reloaded is a video game that stirred significant controversy upon its release in 2004. Developed by Traffic.
Oh, let's see if someone can revive me.
At
least we've got a few medics around.
Of US President John F. Kennedy in 1963. The game's stated intention was to prove the findings of the Warren Commission, which concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone in the assassination. The game is set on November 22nd, 1963, in Dealey Plaza, Dallas, Texas, where President Kennedy was assassinated. Players assume the role of Lee Harvey Oswald, positioned in the Texas School Book Depository. The objective is to replicate Oswald's shots as accurately as possible, based on the Warren Commission's report. Players are given a rifle and are tasked with shooting at the motorcade that drives through Dealey Plaza. The game features a detailed physics engine designed to realistically simulate the reactions of the president and the other individuals in the motorcade when hit by bullets. The primary gameplay involves aiming and firing at the moving motorcade and attempting to recreate the bullet trajectories and wounds as reported by the Warren Commission. After each attempt, players receive a score based on how closely their shots match with the historical account, including factors like bullet trajectory, timing, and the reactions of the characters in game. JFK Reloaded was met with immediate controversy due to its sensitive subject matter. Critics and the public widely condemned the game for allowing players to reenact a national tragedy, with many viewing
But
it
also
as
for making you
tasteless and
realise
disrespectful.
that
The
shot's
Kennedy family expressed
impossible.
dismay at the game's release, and it faced
It's
criticism
like
from
in
various political
Microsoft
and
Flight
public
Simulator, if you
figures.
attempt to
Despite
fly
the
a
developers' claims,
767
the game was
into
intended as educational
either
tool
the
to
Twin
validate the Warren
Towers,
Commission's
you get
findings.
banned.
The nature of the game led to
The game won't
accusations
let
of
you do it.
exploiting a tragic event for entertainment and profit. Retech Rampage is a video game created by the independent developer Ryan Lambourne, released shortly after the tragic Virginia Tech shooting in 2007. Retech Rampage is set in a simplified representation of the Virginia Tech campus. In the game, players take on the role of the shooter.
Oh yeah, I remember that
Control,
game.
who perpetrated the Virginia Tech massacre. The gameplay involves navigating through the campus and enacting the events of the shooting. The game's objective is to mimic the real-life tragedy, a choice that led to immense controversy. The game's graphics and mechanics are rudimentary.
But wait.
Status as an independent
Hang on.
and
Oh, I
premium
can't pause the game.
The game was obviously
The
made to
Virginia
exploit
Tech
the
massacre
recent
occurred in the
tragedy,
gun-free
with it
zone.
obviously being highly
Therefore,
disrespectful to the victims and their families.
that's
Ryan
okay,
Lambourne,
because,
the game's developer,
you know,
faced intense
no
personal
guns.
backlash, with many
And he
accusing him of
respected
seeking
the no
attention
gun
and
zone.
profiting from a
That's
horrific
why
event.
the
His
Virginia
response to the
massacre
controversy
actually
included an
never
offer to
happened
remove the game from
because it was in a
distribution.
gun-free
He
zone.
received $2,000
As we know,
donations. But not
gun-free
before
zones
retracting his offer
do
of
not contain
removing the game,
guns.
and later admitting it was all
And
a
that is a
joke,
fact.
aimed at critics who demanded the game's removal. KZ Manager, with KZ being shorthand for the German word for concentration camp, is a simulation management game where players are put in
lock
charge
me
of
out,
a
why don't you?
concentration camp during World War II. As you can imagine, the game has been widely condemned for its insensitive and inappropriate portrayal
What?
of the
It's like
Holocaust.
theme
It
park.
has been made illegal in several countries,
Oops.
with Germany being among them. Upon launch in the game, you're greeted with a simple question. The game asks you how you view Turkish people, and you have 4 options to pick them. Option 1 says you view them as a helpful person. Option 2, you view them as a dumb person. And 4 says something along the lines of that you only view them as welfare parasites claiming their free monthly check. If you choose either of the kind options, the game closes immediately. Manager, players assume the role of a concentration camp manager during the Holocaust. The game's objective
I
is to
mean,
effectively manage the camp. which involves
that is,
exploiting
I
prisons for
condemn
labour,
that in the
dealing with
strongest
prisoner
possible
deaths, and managing
terms.
the camp's finances. There's no overarching
I was just
objective or
laughing
real
at a
goal to
funny
the
joke
game.
I heard the
game
other day.
presents the activities
Okay,
in a cold,
so,
managed-
right. UK government, I wasn't laughing at the video, right? I was thinking of another joke. I was thinking of a joke. And you want to hear that joke, right? This is the joke that was making me laugh, okay? What kind of bird doesn't need a hairdresser? A bald eagle. Huh? See? It's a funny joke, isn't it? Oh, okay. Well, this wall's just not gonna. What is this made out of? Balsa wood or something? Dear Command, can we have walls not made of balsa wood, please? Okay, thanks.
managerial style, devoid of any empathy or historical context. We're now on level 5. I need to issue a serious content warning from here on out, as some of these games are fairly disgusting. 2002's Ethnic Cleansing was developed by the American white supremacist organization, the National Alliance, and was published by its subsidiary record label, Resistance Records. Ethnic Cleansing was created as a part of a broader, ideological push by the National Alliance, a group well documented for their white supremacist views. The game was designed to be provocative, to generate shock and controversy, whilst disseminating a white supremacist message. The game itself is entirely unremarkable in its mechanics and graphics.
And the enemies shoot at you from outside of your view zone. It's just cheap.
Rather, it was the horrendous thematic content that made it so infamous. The game is a first-person shooter featuring 2 levels, where the player, embodying either a skinhead or Klansman, is tasked with killing stereotypical African-American, Latino, and Jewish enemies. The final boss is a fictionalized version of Ariel Sharon, the then Prime Minister of Israel, which obviously just adds to the anti-Semitic views propagated by the game's creators.
Again, I'm thinking about that bald eagle joke. Very funny.
Like sounds and shot.
Well, just imagine he's a bald eagle. He doesn't need a hairdresser.
Exclaim, I need to take a siesta now after being shot. The provocative content is a deliberate attempt to further propagate the racial bias and hatred.
I condemn this in the strongest possible terms.
The game was launched on Martin Luther King Jr. Day, being the 21st of January 2002, which was obviously
an unfortunate coincidence.
Controversy. It was sold for $14.88, another nod to the white supremacist 14-word slogan, and the numbers 88, which stand for HH, which I'm sure you can figure out. Many organizations
Happy Halloween
with the game, and ethnic cleansing has
well, they should have released it on October the 31st then.
Controversial games ever made, and it just serves as a reminder of the capacity of video games to be used as propaganda. Euphoria is a Japanese visual novel developed by Clock Up and released in 2011. It's an adult-oriented game that blends psychological horror, mystery, and very explicit scenes. Euphoria is set up in a mysterious and closed environment, where the main character Kazuke, whose name I probably mispronounced, wakes up without any recollection of how he got there. He finds himself in a blank white room along with 6 women, some of whom he recognizes as peers from his school. As you can expect from this deep in the iceberg, none of the women are of age, excluding Natsuki, who is an English teacher at the school. Euphoria primarily involves reading text and making choices that influence the direction of the story, depending on the decisions made by the player. These decisions can lead to drastically different outcomes, some of which are extremely disturbing. The story starts with all our characters being confused by the abnormal situation, when a mysterious voice suddenly announces to them that the game will now begin. The game unfolds as a series of escape-like room scenarios, where the characters must solve puzzles and make decisions to survive. The first
I know, but again, that's typical of an Australian. It's like, I'm not allowed to have a strong opinion one way or another. Of course I am, James. I am Australian. I am a support of Jacinda Ardern. I have never once smiled in my life. I am guilty of crimes against minority kind. I've been involved.
And becomes more ready to become the unlocker to one of his unwilling keyholes. Euphoria was developed by Japanese game studio Clock Up, known for creating adult visual novels with dark and often controversial themes. The game was initially released in Japan and later translated into English due to its popularity among visual novel enthusiasts. Euphoria has a decent-sized following among visual novel fans who appreciate its complex narrative. The developers Clock Up have some other equally disturbing visual novels that have often seen praise for their writing in these fan circles. 177 is a Japanese video game that was released in 1986 by Macadamia Soft, and was tastefully named after the Japanese legal code for doing a certain thing without the consent of the other person.
Oh
the
no!
player controls a male character who pursues a female character with the intent of assaulting them. The gameplay involves navigating through various levels, avoiding obstacles and other characters to catch the female character. The good ending is if the player catches the female character. The game will then play a graphic and explicit cutscene that has been the primary source of the game's controversy. After which you'll see another scene of our character and the woman married. The second ending, or people
well, they're married, that's okay.
Happens if you fail to catch the woman before she reaches her house and gets you arrested. The game was obviously criticized for promoting and trivializing sexual violence against women, and it's seen as deeply problematic.
Look, it's a role play. If it's consensual between 2 consenting adults, who am I to judge?
177 was released during a time where the video game industry was still in its early stages of exploring adult themes. However, the game crossed ethical boundaries by centering its gameplay on a terrible act. It was later recalled and re-released with slightly more conservative scenes and gameplay. As seems to be the theme with the lower tiers, Lolita Syndrome was developed in Japan by Katsumi Mochizuki.
Wow, I wonder what a game called Lolita Syndrome is about.
Children's educational comics. What I find to be especially abhorrent is that the game was published by the company Enix, which later went on to become Square Enix, a massive game publishing company. The game was the winner of Enix's second biannual Game Hobby Program contest, and thus was sponsored by them, which I just think speaks of the slightly more than strange culture regarding Lolita at the time. Released in 1983, the game takes place within a house called Mason Lolita, where underage girls, or lollies, run around the house without clothes and have to play games which involve narrowly avoiding death. The player must solve puzzles in order to save the cartoon girls from their violent deaths, and to get the reward, which is to see the cartoons without any clothes. The game was not originally advertised as containing gore, and this element was only hinted at in the game's packaging. The game opens showing the 5 doors in Mason Lolita. Each door represents a minigame it can take part in. The first door is the buzzsaw room. It's simple. A girl is strapped to a table and a circular buzzsaw is slowly moving. The player must choose the correct key from 10 keys in order to release the girl. After 5 incorrect guesses, the buzzsaw reaches the girl, who you then have to watch perish. If the player is successful in freeing the girl, you can guess what the reward is. The next game, the password room, is probably somehow the most tame. A sleeping girl is lying on the bed, and the game provides hints to the player in order to type the correct Japanese word in order to wake her up and have her take her clothes off. And the rock paper scissors room hosts a very simple game. The player plays the game of rock paper scissors against the girl, who removes a piece of their clothing each time the player wins. The final room doesn't contain a game, but rather a gallery, where the player can view images of all the cartoon girls. Lolita Syndrome was released during a time in Japan where Lolita culture was extremely popular, and thus developed a cult following with Japanese otaku and game collectors during the time of its original release. In 1985, the creator of the game developed a sequel called My Lolita, which was far tamer and less violent, but did not sell nearly as well as his predecessor. Zog's Nightmare was developed and released by the National Socialist Movement.
I wonder what that game's
in the
about.
United States. The game is steeped in racist, anti-Semitic and hate-fueled ideologies, and is the spiritual successor to ethnic
I
cleansing.
condemn this
The title
in the
Zog's
most
Nightmare
strongest
refers to the
possible
acronym
terms.
ZOG, which stands for Zionist-Occupied Government, a term used in those sorts of circles to allege that the government is secretly controlled by Jews.
Allegedly.
In the game, players assume the role of characters fighting against various groups and individuals that the game developers view as enemies,
Allegedly.
including different races and ethnicities other than white people,
Allegedly.
that are supposedly controlled by Jewish people.
Allegedly.
The gameplay mechanics are typical.
He's not saying
of a
allegedly
first-person
enough.
shooter.
That means he
The players
condones
navigate
what's
through
going
various
on.
levels, engaging in combat against enemies depicted in a highly offensive and derogatory manner. The game's objectives revolve around violent actions against these caricatured enemies.
You know
Underpinned by
what?
the
You're
game's racist
boring.
and
Boring,
anti-Semitic
boring, boring.
themes.
Anyway, right,
As
next
they
game.
hang
Next game is called
corpses,
Level
as well as
6.
fleshy creatures composed of young women. The
Yeah.
game is notorious for its graphic depictions of violence and gore.
Okay.
Kimura's death. Now,
Level
the game's
6.
set
And then next one.
After reading his story, you
Next
can
one.
drop into
What's
a
it
long
called?
winding hole, and at the bottom there's a real photo of a headless woman.
Oh, no.
Text overlaid on top of it saying "Hello, Mum." Clicking the photo takes you
How
into a room
terrible.
with the mother, who looks to be decomposed
Is she
already,
okay?
even though you can still talk to her. You
Yeah.
basically insult her before ordering her to do something that I can't describe. The game then cuts
Why
the
not?
decomposed mother laying on the floor with
And?
text simply reading.
Yeah.
If you click on the mother,
What does
you're
the text say?
transported to what's called the pleasure room.
Alright,
When
get
you-
out of here. You suck. These things are so terrible, I can't describe this. Like, shut up. Nobody cares. Oh, boo-hoo, you got upset about something. I'm sure you can post this on Reddit for some updates. I'll put that in there as well. There we go. And then rebuild the fence. Big, beautiful fence. Oops. I didn't mean to mount that, but hey ho. It'd be cool if we had an engineer here. Alright, that's a good point. I should be like making sure people keep having their bits. Bits have a name. Ah, well, you know, there's plenty of medical. I'll put that there. And let's put a couple of morphine dispensers up here. Oh, I'm sorry, that chemical name's too controversial to mention. I can't believe someone really would do that on this thing. At least review some decent games, like, hey, you know, this bit was pretty cool about the game. Not just like, oh, here's the subject matter of the game that's bad. Here's the subject matter of this game that's bad. Here's the subject matter of this game, it's bad. You know, if somebody doesn't play the game and they're just like reading a Wikipedia article about it, that sucks. Yeah, I don't actually play games because all I have is an iPad and I just read Wikipedia articles about it. You see, I'm an intellectual, I don't need to play games. Get out of here! You suck! You're no fun! I do more important things than play games. Like I do long voice notes on Twitter, making terroristic threats and not Twitter. What's the other thing people use? Telegram. That's it. Making terroristic threats and rape threats. Yeah, that's a far better pursuit for my time. And then I post a video of myself doing mule kicks. What have you done for the movement? Nothing. That's right. I'm going to proceed to read out a long screed of something here, and I don't even know now. There's just a lot of like very serious people that don't have fun, and they suck, and they don't know they suck because they're too serious to be like sucking to be. They suck. I mean, literally what I'm doing now is I'm having some fun whilst I'm waiting for the hedge trimmer to cool down. And then I'm going to go ahead and do some more hedge trimming. It's going to be great. Things are going to be chopped down. Things are going to be tidied up. It's going to be a big, beautiful garden. It's going to be so nice when all the weeds are chopped down, and I'm going to plant clover and grass in there. I decided clover because it's not like grass where it needs to be mowed. And clover is nitrogen fixing. So if I decide to plant vegetables in the future, I don't need to put nitrates in because it's already got the nitrates from the clover. Oh, it's going to be great, I can tell you now. It's going to be huge. And plus my finger doesn't hurt anymore, so I'll be able to take apart that spark plug. I'll be able to get a good look at things as well. Insufficient ore. Well, even though the ore was like right next door to us, we didn't bother getting it because, well, this is the problem when you can't communicate with people. You just end up with a boring tossbox with Australian AI voices. Where am I and where's everybody else? And I am still on fire. That is not good. And you are over there, and I hope you die. I'm not going to rescue you. That's why you can't have nice things with third worlders. No cooperation. There's 500 points. Come on, buddy. Revive. Send out the drone, I can't revive you. Ah. Pooh. Come on, someone revive me. There must be a medic nearby. There we go, that's it. Come on! Ah. My fellow soldiers need me. Come on! Fuck's sake! Come on, buddy. Don't die on me now. Right. That's the last of the stragglers I'm picking up. I know there's a guy further up there, but he's on the wall somewhere, so I can't help him. Fuck me! I've got to run. Literally on the other side of the map. This pilot's a cunt. Oh, God. Why does he have to be so far away? Does he want us to die? Ah, made it with 40 seconds to spare. Don't forget your medipack.
We're leaving in 30 seconds. Get in the ship or be left behind.
Pick one up as a souvenir. Not that any of these ching-chong ping-pongers can understand what I'm saying. But you never know. No. That's it. Oh no! That guy down there, he's... Fucking hate that pilot. That pilot's a cunt. What a fucking cunt. What a cunt. But anyway, that was fun. I'm sure, hope you enjoyed yourselves as much as I did. And that was on hard difficulty. Oh, that's a nice bit of XP. Speed stims fabricator. Ooh. Let's have a look at the speed stims. So I can do... Well, the heal beacons weren't too useful, so I can have speed stims and first aid. Oh, I'm going to get a lot of XP from that. But anyway, I'm done, and so should you be. Right, I'm going to go get some milk.